Hello everybody, and today is a bit of an allium special. In this small tunnel behind me I've got a little bit of a drying or curing rack, and all my normal garlic is hanging there vertically and my elephant garlic, and it's time to move them on because today I also want to lift up my shallots and my onions. And be prepared, these are blinking huge and probably the best I've ever grown them, to be honest, but we're going to get them off and we'll put them onto the curing rack as well. And then the next stage for the garlic and the elephant garlic is to trim, clean them up, and I'm going to plait some of the garlic, and then I'll take it all up home. But I'll give you a good all-round feel for this allium lark. So this is my onion and shallot bed. It's 16 foot long, 4 foot wide, and it's rammed with stuff. And this year it's grown really well, and I'm incredibly pleased with the results. But just let's backtrack a minute to Boxing Day, when I sowed the seeds for the onions. These shallots I sowed in January, and I gave them all the care and attention I could then in planting them and sowing them carefully. When the seedlings came up, potted them on, and then potted them on again, and eventually planted them out. But they had all this care and attention all the way through the cycle, so we don't want to let it fall at this last hurdle. We've got the last hurdle in the race, and if we get it wrong now, then your whole crop can be ruined. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to show you exactly what not to do when lifting a shallot and an onion. Remember, this is not to do. So there's a smallish shallot here. It's bent over, it's ready for harvesting, and I've just grabbed hold of it by the neck and I've pulled it up, and then I'm just going to drop it in there. And I see so many people doing that, and then their onions don't store through the winter. So what's actually happening here is, as you're pulling at this, you're breaking the fibres in here, and you're letting infection and rot set in. The roots that you pull out of the ground, you're breaking, and you're pulling at this basal plate as well, which is another point of entry for rot and fungus and all kinds of nasties. And then throwing it in the crate there, you're bruising this like you would an apple or a banana. And again, that's another point where it's then able to start decaying, and it could decay from the inside out. So what you want to do is, using a fork, is get well underneath your plant and then just gently lift it up. You've not pulled at the neck, you've not pulled at the roots, and if you carefully then place it in your tray, you've not bruised it either. And that's it, and it's no more difficult to do. If you're on, I'm growing no dig here, so this is relatively easy to do. If you're on soil, you may need to get a garden fork underneath these and wiggle away at it for a while, and it'd be a little bit harder work. But it's well worth taking that extra time at this stage, and the curing and storing, to make sure your crop keeps well into next year. So these will all go onto the drying rack in the small tunnel, which we'll have a look in a bit, and they'll sit there while they cure, and these green stems, or greeny yellow stems, dry out. Then we can snip them back and prepare these for storage. I've had a phenomenal crop this year from these, and these are Zebrunne Shallots. There's that big one. Let's have him up, and you've probably already seen a couple of big ones, but look at that, it's like a small onion. Phenomenal. So we'll get these up, and then we'll move on to the onions. So that tray is just about full. I've laid the rest out here. I mean, these are just blinking marvellous, the size of them. And I've picked a few out here. These, obviously you always pick out the big ones, don't you? So they're three of the bigger ones, which are brilliant. And these are the smaller ones. That is the smallest. It's not bad, but it's, you know, it's tiny. But this is really the stamp of the smaller ones, and there's probably 5 or 6 like this. and let's say that's the smallest one. But if I'd have grown that last year, I would have been more than ecstatically happy with that. And then when you compare it with one of these things, you can see why I'm just absolutely delighted this year. So these now need to move on to the curing process, and we'll get these onions up first and then we'll move on. But yeah, very, very, very happy with these. So onto the onions, and I've got two types here. I've got this first lot is Bedfordshire Champion, and at the end I've got a couple of rows, not many, of the Ailsa onions. So again, it's the same crack. Dig underneath it and gently lift it. You don't want to pull on the neck, you don't want to break that basal plate. And this is a weird one. This is split into 3 onions here almost. It's a weird one. We'll use this one fairly soon because that won't keep, because it's broken its skin, it's open. And if you need to get your fork under it in a few places to lift it, then do so. Well, these are clonking onions. I wish now I'd grown some of the mammoth onions that you can get from Robinson Seeds, really, because I think, well, if this is just a standard onion and they've grown to this sort of size, then you can imagine the size a proper mammoth onion might have got to. But you live and you learn. But these are very, very good sized. I love the Bedfordshire Champ. I've grown these for many, many years now. I've tried all the others as well. The Stuttgartner and the Sturons and all kinds of types, Kelseys. But you always come back to the ones you know. Well, the ones that have done well for you in the past. And I think these Bedfordshire Champions were grown for the show bench. But they've turned into being such a good onion. It's mild, it's not too strong in flavour. But often in cooking, it's what you do with the products that will develop the flavour. And this whole bed will be turned over in the next day or two, and I'll be planting kale in this one. There we go. I'll get the rest up, divide them up, and I'll show you the different types of onion that I've got. So these are my Ailsa onions. I've ended up with about 7 or 8 of them, and they're not a bad size. The Bedfordshire Champs, they're brilliant. And now, I don't normally grow onions simply because they don't normally do very well for me. So I've switched to shallots in this year and previous years, simply because they grow much better. That's why there's such a heavy crop of them here. And this isn't all of them, there's also half a tray full down the end there. So all in all, I'm delighted. Now these need drying, they need curing, time to dry out, and yeah, we'll move on to that now. So we're just coming into the little tunnel now and see all these tomato plants. Actually, some of these need supporting, tying up. Okay, that's another job. But I've got this drying rack hanging here, and you can see here, this is like my elephant garlic, and the garlic's up the other end. And you can see if I pick up one of these, you can see how papery and sort of fragile this is now. And this is what you want. There's still some pliability in the stems, although they are now dried out. And that will help me with the plaiting shortly. So what I need to do now is remove all this, put it in a tray ready for the next stage, and then I can get the onions and shallots all hang up on this tray, and their curing process can start, and then I can move this garlic and elephant garlic on. So again, you want to be careful with this. You don't want to bruise these bulbs because it's a way to rot, and these are cured now. And I'll just pop these in this tray down here, and they're ready to be moved on to the next stage. It's not a long job, it's fiddly, but it's not a long job really, and it's well worth doing because it means these will last through to next year Now the next stage is, this is the one of the elephant garlic, and you can just sort of ruffle the roots up just to take some of the soil off, lightly brush it off. See, this is what can happen. This papery out coating can become loose, so don't do that too much unless you really want to, i.e. if you're making a gift. And then you can just trim some of these extra roots off, and then before this goes into storage, that's what I do, is I chop that off and I leave a good sort of 6 or 8 inches of stem on there. That's still a little bit damp in there, so there's a possibility that that could have infection. If it does, it will start to travel down there, and later on, if you notice that, you can chop it again. So leave a good length. As I say, that's all you really need to do. Don't bother with these little bulbils. They take far too long to grow. You're looking at 3-4 years before you get a bulb like that from it, unless you're on an extreme budget and somebody gives you those bulbils. Don't bother with them. If you've got the time and patience, then go ahead and do it. I say those two now are ready for storage, and I'll just lay them in trays and keep them somewhere cool, dark and dry. Now, plaiting the garlic is a lot simpler than you would think, actually. So what you want to do is start off with 3 bulbs, 2 like this and 1 on the top. Now you can see I've got that to my neck. Straight away I'm going to wrap some string around it. There is a way of doing it where you use the actual stems of the garlic to start this off, but this is just as good as any. Just tie those 3 together and trim off the ends, and you've now got your start, and you've got 3 stems. So your first one you put in one side and keep the stem along that middle spline. Now the opposite side to where you put the bulb in, put that over, and that now becomes your middle, so that when you put your next one in on this side, that goes along the middle, and the one on the opposite side to the bulb becomes your middle. And you just carry on doing that. The middle one there, take the opposite side over to what you've done, so you are now plaiting like you would do with hair. Always put the stem in along the middle, and you can trim these bulbs up as well if you want to. I really don't bother. And if you take your time, you'll get it nice and tight. You can see the stems are all gathering nicely together. Right, I'm going to finish that one there. I'm just going to continue plaiting this up to a finish. So you can see that's where you get that nice decorative showy bit. And at the top you can either gather these together and form a loop like this that you can hang it from, tie it off, or what I do is I'll just put some string on here, and then you've got your nice garlic all plaited up the back. Nice garlic string there. So I'll probably get half a dozen out of that lot. There you go. Doesn't get any simpler than that. and they're ready to store now. The great thing is you get lots of airflow around them, so you can trim these off if you want to. Right, so here we have it. This is the first one I did on camera. You can see the mess that's in, but that's fine for storing. Nothing wrong with that. You can see it's all plaited at the back and tied off there. That'll store fine. But here's one I spent a bit more time over, trimmed them all off, lightly rubbed over them to get some of the dirt off, and you can see nicely plaited at the back and turned off at the top. This one I'm giving away as a gift, that's why I've spent that time on it. There's a new plot holder there, I've spoken about it before, Georgina, and she's on a plot now. I'm just going to go and surprise her with it. I know she doesn't want to be on camera today, already spoken to her, but I'm going to take her this now anyway. But for now, I hope you got something from today's video. Do look after yourselves, stay safe. I'll see you all very, very soon. Ta-ra now.